Well, it's that time of year again, so sit tight while I tell you about my top 10 movies from 2012. And by 10, I mean however the fuck many I feel like. I mean, if there are more than 10 movies in a year worth recommending, then why wouldn't I tell you about some of them? And not only that, but there's a point to me waiting 16 months before doing this too. When I make a list of the year's best movies, the point is to provide you with a list of the year's best movies, not get more views by jumping on the New Year's bandwagon, which is exactly what anyone's doing when they start their review by saying, oh, I know I haven't seen all the movies I wanted to this year, and there are some that would probably make my list, but I haven't watched them yet, and it's not playing in my area, but I'm just gonna make my list now, because instead of waiting until I could actually watch it, I'm more concerned about the views. Why would I wait for foreign films to be released when 100% of the best movies of every year come from America? If it doesn't have a $200 million advertising budget, then it's not worth watching, right? Right? Please understand that the point of this list is not to go, "Hi, you haven't heard of it, that means I'm better than you." Just because we might not have the same film taste doesn't mean that my reasons for liking the films aren't genuine, and I'll try my best to explain why I liked each film without spoiling it. I've had to watch through a lot of horrible pieces of shit to find some of these movies, and even if right now you're thinking these movies aren't your kind of thing, I'd like to think that there's enough variety in this list that I'll have introduced you to at least one film that you'll enjoy by the end of it. And who knows, you might even like it enough to own a physical copy of it.
On new Memorex videotape. This remarkable tape has been recorded and re-recorded 100 times, but I bet you still couldn't tell if it was Memorex or me, which really isn't me. It's Memorex.
Starting off this list at number 15 is an Indonesian film called The Raid Redemption. This movie is balls-to-the-wall action, and it's action done right. Sure, it's not like there's a compelling story and interesting characters holding it up, but part of what makes it successful is that it doesn't pretend to be anything different. Yeah, sure, they very well could have included the 15 to 20 minutes of typical Hollywood-formulated bullshit, but instead they kept it extremely minimal, and I think that that was a great choice. Not only does it help get straight to the action that you paid for, but it makes the fight scenes more tense as well. For most of the movie, there's no real clues as to whether or not the character that you're watching in this particular fight scene is completely expendable. Unlike the Expendables, where the characters are anything but expendable, this is a film where you're actually able to feel scared and get a rush of adrenaline from the fight scenes, because the character you're watching has a good chance of dying. Who would have thought it would have taken this long to figure out that action scenes work better when the characters participating in them aren't invincible? Not only that, but the choreography itself in the fight scenes is very well done. There's none of that typical Hollywood quick-cut close-shot bullshit that's specifically designed so that you can't see how bad their choreography is. This is a movie that excels on its action, and it tries its best not to bullshit you in between. Now, that being said, the reason why it's so low on this list is that it doesn't nearly have the same effect on the second watch, and there are a few moments that are kind of fucking ridiculous, but regardless, there's enough to appreciate about what this movie did right to justify giving it a mention. At number 14, we have a Danish documentary called The Ambassador. In this documentary, a journalist goes undercover as a Liberian diplomat, pretending to be planning to set up a match factory in the Central African Republic, but secretly showing us the process of obtaining blood diamonds. And holy shit, does this guy have some balls. He literally puts his life on the line to show us these shots, and despite the obvious danger and overall seriousness of what he's doing, somehow he was able to deliver quite a lot of this documentary in a way that's comedic. It's funny, informative, and even kind of fucked up, and I'd say it's definitely worth checking out.
I've asked you to leave your mobile phone and your bag and everything.
Yeah.
I don't want this conversation to be recorded.
No.
Okay. This conversation that we're about to have never happened.
Okay.
All right?
Yes.
You want to have unfettered access, preferably with diplomatic credentials, in and out of a diamond-producing zone.
Let us roll.
Okay. If you are going to do what I think you're going to do, okay, if you do it the way we will set you up to do it. You have a very high probability of success.
Yes?
If you do it any other way, the best that you can hope for is to be arrested and go to jail and lose everything you've got.
Yes.
That's the best you can hope for.
Yes.
The worst you can hope for is that you end up dead in a ditch in Africa.
Yes.
I'm giving it to you on a plate.
At number 13, we have Killing Them Softly by Andrew Dominic. Now, despite this only being his third film, I've come to understand that he's got a little bit of recognition in the film scene. The assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford has been on my watch list for quite some time, and I still haven't seen it. Story of my life. But now that I've seen this movie, even though I wouldn't call it phenomenal, it's got me more than interested to check out his previous works. This movie not only serves as a mobster crime story, but is also able to make a lot of statements on America's financial system for anybody paying attention. All of the performances are great and the characters are consistently well written, but what really brings it home is how uniquely stylized it is, with some really interesting choices in audio editing. Now, unfortunately, despite praising the choices made for audio editing, there was at least one moment where I heard some clipping, but overall this is a very well done film. The pacing and conclusion are a little bit unconventional, so try not to get caught up in your expectations for where the story goes, but I found this movie to be very entertaining and I'm looking forward to checking out his others.
Jesus, that's what you fucking got? Dishwashing gloves?
Look, you take what you can fucking get, all right?
These fucking things are too thick.
That's what they had.
They might add some fucking latex gloves from like a fucking hospital or something.
You'll make do.
Jesus, the fuck is this?
What does it look like? It's a fucking sawn-off shotgun, okay? It's what you asked me to fucking get you. I mean, you asked me for this, mate.
We shoot somebody with this fucking thing, it's gonna kill everybody in the fucking room.
Well, tell them that.
We're gonna look like a bunch of fucking amateurs when we go in there.
Take a breath.
All right, you ready to do this?
You don't even have your glove on.
I got my fucking glove on.
Oh,
Put
just
your
fucking you got
shut
your
the
glove
fuck
on.
up.
You shut the fuck up.
You know, I'm going out there with a fucking hand grenade and there's a fucking condom on my hand.
At number 12, we have Like Someone in Love by Abos Kiarostami. There's a good chance that I'm not pronouncing that right, because despite this entire film being Japanese, the director was born and raised in Iran, and he's the same director as Certified Copy, which was spoken in English, French, and Italian. If that doesn't deserve some credit, I don't know what does. Because when I first watched this film at Vancouver Film Fest in 2012, I had no idea who he was. And although I enjoyed it at the time, I wasn't quite sure whether or not it would end up on this list. Now, I don't believe in adding any film to my top 10 list unless I've seen it twice. And after watching and loving Certified Copy and understanding what this director is about, it really won me over the second time. Now, if you're the type of person that doesn't typically watch films that deviate from the norm but would like to start somewhere, trust me that this is not the film you want to start with. Despite loving this film overall and obviously putting it on my list, it's not something that I would exactly recommend to people unless they have a certain degree of patience. It's extremely well shot and the characters are all convincingly realistic. But if you find that you're not the type of person who normally checks out things from the Criterion Collection, I would suggest checking out something else on this list first. And if this does look appealing to you, I would strongly recommend checking out Certified Copy because that is a much, much better film. Now, you're probably wondering why this is even on my list if I have to add such a huge disclaimer in front of it. And the reason is because it's impossible for me to ignore just how meticulously directed this is. The majority of the movie is in real time and everything's so natural and realistic that it really makes you feel like you're an omniscient observer on the conversations taking place. And I can rarely say this about a movie, but even when analyzing and critiquing it, it's almost impossible to view the actors as anything but their characters. The only flaw I noticed in the film was a moment near the end where one of the characters' lines of dialogue was out of sync, but aside from that, this is an extremely professionally well done film. Granted, he would have drawn in bigger audiences had there been a few more arcs in the story, but when it's abundantly clear that he told the story he wanted to tell, I fail to see how that would be fair criticism.
渚生かすればいいじゃん。なんで私なの？
俺にもわからないけど行けばわかるよ。とにかく今回は商売のためなんだよ。その人のためなんだよ。彼の頼みに応えたいんだよ。絶対に君も後悔しないから。
政治家ってこと？
もう聞くなよ。行けばわかるって。さあ、ワイン飲んだらすぐに出かけるから。着くまで タクシーの中で寝てたらいいから1時間かかるから10時半に作って約束してるんで早くしないと。
だから行きたくないって言ってんじゃん。
はい、大丈夫ですよ。
At number 11, we have one of the more accessible films on this list called The Sessions. In complete contrast to the movie that I was just talking about, this is a film where pretty much everything you can appreciate about it is right in front of your face. And honestly, it's kind of fucking confusing how John Hawkes didn't get an Oscar nomination for this, because this is one of the better performances in the year. In this film, he plays Mark O'Brien, a man paralyzed from the neck down because of polio. What follows on screen is his struggles with romance and eventual decision to hire a sex surrogate. Now, it's kind of odd that this is so close on the list to Like Someone in Love because they're pretty much polar opposites. Aside from the fantastic performance from John Hawkes, this is a film that I mostly appreciate for its subject matter. I mean, most people simply wouldn't tackle this type of story just because they don't have the balls. What it tried to do, it was successful at, and I'm glad it understood what its capabilities were. It's crowd-pleasing, heartfelt, and somewhat dramatic, but mostly it's a comedy. And it's respectable that they were able to make one out of a somewhat serious subject matter without it seeming immature or insincere. If you're looking for entertainment with minimal interpretation, then I have no issues recommending this to you, and I hope you enjoy it.
Sometimes I ejaculate during a bed bath in front of my attendants. All I feel is shame and mortification, while other men apparently get pleasure. I'm sorry if I sound angry.
Don't worry about it. Go on.
This therapist suggested I could work with a sexual specialist. Have sex with a person known as a sex surrogate who would be sensitive to my unusual needs. I've been giving it some thought.
Hold on. What do you mean, have sex?
Well, when a man and a woman love each other very much...
No, I understand what it... Are we talking about sexual intercourse?
I think so.
Outside marriage?
I did do my best on the question of marriage.
What's the difference between this sexual specialist and a common prostitute?
I don't know, but I think there's a difference.
At number 10, we have a South Korean film called Nameless Gangster. For whatever reason, a lot of the good films that come out of South Korea happen to be crime stories, but this one's almost got kind of a Martin Scorsese feel to it. Any issues I have with this film are fairly minimal. Like, there was a scene where someone gets stabbed and it was delivered in kind of a cheesy way. And there were a couple continuity errors that I noticed, but aside from that, this movie is pretty fantastic. The film features two great South Korean actors, Jung Woo-ha from The Chaser, and the incredibly talented Min-sik Choi from Oldboy and I Saw the Devil. Without their performances, this film would still be above solid for execution. But with them, it really brings it up to a whole new level. It's crazy to see Min-sik Choi pull off such different characters for every film I've seen him in. And the fact that his character's shit-faced drunk for half the movie really gives him an opportunity to shine, because that is something that he does very well and in a very entertaining way. The plot is solid without it being too original, but like I said, the overall execution and the fantastic performances in this movie make it very deserving of the spot on this list. I'd recommend this to pretty much anyone, so go check it out.
반갑습니다, 형님.
반갑습니다, 형님.
됐다, 공부 됐고 나오.
김 사장. 이거 살려줘 있어, 살려줘 있어, 살려줘 있어, 김 사장. 살려줘
And number 9 is a documentary called Indie Game the Movie. Now, I might be a little biased considering I had already bought and played every single one of the games featured in this movie, but I do think that regardless, it is a very well done documentary. The documentary shows the development process of 3 different indie games, and the way that they set up for filming is particularly clever. Here you've got the perspective of someone who built their game from scratch and had a tremendous amount of success in the market. Here you've got someone dealing with the pre-production side of the business while his game's still in development, and the best segment of the 3 is for Super Meat Boy, chronicling the period of time just before and during the game's release date. So they were not only able to get good interviews from the creators of 3 different credible indie games, but they were also able to show the different stages of creating a successful indie title. And it's even crazier when you consider that they started filming 2 of these stories before they'd even had a success. I mean, the documentary would have kind of a different tone if Super Meat Boy turned out to be a total flop, so I applaud the filmmakers for being able to detect a success before it happens. Not only that, but who better to score the soundtrack than Jim Guthrie, the composer behind the fantastic soundtrack for the indie game Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery. Now, this film's soundtrack doesn't exactly live up to that one, but it's going for more of a documentary feel anyway, so I respect that. I'm really glad that this documentary touched on the general psychology of video games and what it takes to make a player learn a new mechanic. There's an interesting science behind it that I'm sure even non-gamers would find interesting. Now, I understand that not everybody likes Fez, and Phil Fish has done some pretty douchey things in the spotlight, but I don't see that as any reason not to be able to enjoy the documentary anyway. I mean, you're free to interpret what anyone's saying whatever way you want, and to me the highlight of the movie is listening to Edward McMillan talk about what inspires him in his art, and that whether or not you enjoy his games, they come from a very personal place within him. This documentary is entertaining, well edited, and a lot of clever choices were made. I'm recommending this one to pretty much anybody.
And I thought, how cool would it be to like make a game that could put other people inside my mind when I was like 5, 6, 7, and that was Ether. So this kid gets on the back of a monster, and the monster goes around in space, and he gets to explore all these other planets because he can't connect to anybody on Earth, so he goes to find other friends. But all these other planets are inhabited with these kind of weird or sad or nervous creatures. And he goes and tries to solve their problems. And he solves the problems, but they don't become happy. And he keeps going around all these different planets, but each time he solves one of these problems, the Earth gets smaller. And then when he comes back to Earth, and it's so small that when he touches it, it breaks, and then he's kind of lost in space. Each of those planets was like a phobia of mine when I was little, and when I was little, before I'd go to bed, I would obsess. My grandma passed away, and she had a box of my drawings that she saved when I was little. And that's when I found this picture that I had drawn of me in space, floating. But yeah, no, it was validating to find that box and see those things and be like, wow, like, this is just like the game.
At number 8 is Rust and Bone from the director of A Prophet. Now, before you search up anything about this movie, you should understand that the reason why I'm not saying much about it is because I think it's better to go into this movie without knowing much. Certain plot elements are more effective when you don't see them coming, so I'm not gonna spoil that for you. Not only is this movie very well shot, but Marion Cotillard pulls off a phenomenal performance. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right either. Somehow she's able to communicate so much with something as simple as a look in her eye. And even though she outshines everyone else, the other actors in the film are also very talented. Like I said, I don't want to spoil anything, so just trust me that it's good.
Qu'est-ce qu'il t'a dit? Hein? Mais quoi les autres? Il y en a combien? Non mais putain, c'était pas prévu. Ben alors tu les fais toi-même les combats gros là. Fais-les toi-même. Non, c'est pas ça. Non, j'en ai rien à foutre.
Il roule le chat!
Non, c'est toi qui m'écoutes.
Il roule le chat!
T'inquiète pas, rentre à la maison.
Non, tu lui dis, j'en ai rien à foutre. J'en ai rien à foutre.
Mais qu'est-ce que
tu fais chier?
Je t'avais dit de pas le laisser.
Je suis au téléphone.
T'as pas autre chose à foutre que de téléphoner et t'occuper de ton gosse.
Ouais.
Viens. Non, mais...
C'est quoi le bordel, oh?
Je te rappelle. Occupe-toi de ton gosse. T'as pas que ça à foutre.
Mais tu te calmes, oh! Oh! Tu te calmes, ouais! Quoi? Mais putain, tu fais chier, toi! T'as compris?
And number 7 is Reality from the director of Gomorrah. The film centers around a young and married fishmonger named Luciano. He's a character that his friends really seem to love, so they persuade him to audition for a reality TV show. Though once unaffected, this sudden glimpse of a shot at fame seems to consume him, and it sets the story up for being a dark and interesting commentary on how we treat fame in our culture. Everything about it rings depressingly true on how we create values in society, and the immense pain associated with false expectations is incredibly relatable to anybody trying to get a big break as an artist. This is also something that I don't want to spoil too much, but all in all, it's a great commentary on society and our obsession with fame. If that subject matter interests you, then I would suggest checking it out.
Ma stai ancora qua? Ma tu non capisci quando parla una persona? Ma che ti girava? Va! Oh, te ne hai, va! Fatti!
And number 6 is Elena from the director of The Return. Now this is the first movie that I've seen from this director, and I've heard of his films before, but now I'm very excited to watch The Return, which has been on my watch list for quite some time. Story of my life. This impressively shot Russian film tells the story of, you guessed it, Elena and her husband. Both of them had previous marriages before, and they both come from very different levels of economic backgrounds, meaning that Elena's family doesn't really have all that much money. She still loves her son and wants what's best for him, but is worried that he might have to join the army if he can't afford post-secondary education. The film's able to show some really interesting contrast between these divided societies in modern Russia. The score for the film is great and every shot is set up perfectly, and it's impressive to watch this director keep everything in place so well. The director's intent means a lot to me in a film, and it matters most when there's certainty behind it. And I can't honestly say that I can think of anything in this movie that seems unintentional. In any typical Hollywood movie, that picture of her son on the mirror would have had a close shot at least once, especially considering the context of the phone conversation she just had. But this movie doesn't treat you like you're fucking dumb. Yes, we should already understand that she cares a lot about her son, but instead of placing that prop there for the sole purpose of beating it into your head, it instead allows you as the viewer to notice it, and because of that, it's a nice little detail rather than blatant reinforcement. This is an extremely well shot film, and though I can't say it's necessarily complex, I definitely benefited from a second watch. Certain subtleties that are scattered throughout the film are easier to pick up once you've seen the whole thing. Anyway, I thought this movie was great, and I'll be looking forward to seeing his other films.
Твой Сережа до сих пор не отдал мне деньги, которые он занимал 3 года назад, если ты, конечно, помнишь.
А я помню. Ну, ты же знаешь, у Сережи ситуация сейчас такая.
Знаю я твоего Сережу, и ситуация его ясна для меня абсолютно. Сколько лет она такая? Да всю его жизнь. Я не хочу ему потакать. Считай это воспитательной мерой.
К своей дочери ты такие воспитательные меры не применяешь и не применял никогда, я уверена.
Лена, сейчас речь идет о твоем сыне. Ты меня как будто не слышишь. Пусть он, наконец, оторвет задницу от дивана и займется делом. Пусть он накормит свою семью. Ей-богу, если бы речь шла о здоровье мальчика, конечно, не дай бог, деньги бы завтра же лежали тут на столе.
Речь как раз идет о здоровье. Своего внука, если бы он у тебя был, ты бы точно в армию не пустил. Надо просто помочь Саше, понимаешь? Дать ему шанс.
Оставь в покое мою дочь! Зачем ты трогаешь этот вопрос?
Coming in at number 5, we have Samsara, a documentary filmed over the course of 5 years in 25 different countries. It's essentially an hour and 42 minutes of some really impressive shots. It's almost something that you would expect someone to be narrating over top of, giving you explanations on purpose, culture, and origin, but instead this documentary chooses to let you observe and interpret for yourself, and it becomes as educational as you make it out to be. Putting any interpretations aside, you're still left with some breathtaking shots and emotionally powerful music. But despite there being zero narration, I do believe that there are points being made throughout the film. Now, it shows quite a few different cultures in the movie, and we're able to witness a variety of style, art, and rituals that are completely normal within their culture. And it's when they include similar images of cultures that are more akin to our own that we're able to see a really interesting parallel. When shown in close proximity to these odd and foreign customs, it's able to show a certain level of ridiculousness in the customs we're already used to. It also shows a healthy variety of what each culture determines to be an art form, ranging all the way from standard theatrical performances to an edited version of a French performance artist piece called Transfiguration. It's a documentary that allows you to observe, and surprisingly, it is not one that tests your patience. It never lingers on any one shot long enough for you to feel bored, and everything they show is interesting in its own unique way. This is not just a film, it's an experience, and I'd highly recommend watching this on the biggest screen with the best resolution and best sound possible, and let yourself get sucked into the crazy world we call Earth. At number 4, we have Moonrise Kingdom by Wes Anderson. Now, this is the type of movie on my list that I'm comfortable recommending to pretty much anybody. It has a perfect blend of humor and emotional relatability, with enough accessibility to appeal to the average filmgoer and enough style to appeal to the average film critic. It is generally a very well-liked movie, and that's not a bad thing. With this being his film that he made directly after Fantastic Mr. Fox, I can't help but wonder if his work in stop motion inspired him to want to create similar cinematography in live action, because a lot of it feels very similar, but there's enough different about it that it doesn't exactly feel stale. The movie features 2 new child actors and a couple familiar Wes Anderson cast members, but this time we get to see Bruce Willis, who's actually acting and playing a character? Haven't seen that in a while. Anyway, if you want to see a quirky comedy that doesn't use its quirkiness to hide behind a lack of talent, I would suggest checking this one out.
What do you creeps want? We're looking for you. Why? Well, because you're a fugitive. No, I'm not. I quit the Khaki Scouts. Well, it doesn't matter anyway. You don't have that authority. We've been deputized. Now you're gonna come along peacefully. Or not.
Listen to some reason. I don't like you. You don't like me. So why don't you just let us disappear?
Well, it's tempting. But we can't allow it.
You know, you shouldn't be friends with him.
Why not?
Because he's crazy.
Maybe you just don't know him.
Actually, we know him a lot better than you. He's emotionally disturbed because his family died. Nick will be time up.
Do not cross this stick.
You're doomed, Tchaikovsky.
At number 3, we have The Master by Paul Thomas Anderson. In this film, we see some amazing performances by some very talented actors, most notably by Joaquin Phoenix, who gives possibly the best performance of the year. His ability to transform into other characters surpasses the vast majority of Hollywood actors, and pairing him with an actor as great as Philip Seymour Hoffman makes for some amazing scenes. Now, there's lots of films where actors are consistently able to portray characters, but it's written in such a way that the script provides an excuse for us to be shown an emotional powerhouse from these characters. Add that to the ominous soundtrack, amazing cinematography, and cleverly delivered statements on religion, and you've got the number 3 spot on my list.
Is there something frightening to you about the cause's travels into the past?
Frightening?
Yes.
No.
What scares you so much about traveling into the past, sir?
I'm not
Are you afraid that we might discover that our past has been reshapen, perverted, and perhaps what we think we know of this world is false information?
Time travel does not frighten me, sir, because it's not possible. What does frighten me is the possibility of some poor soul with leukemia
there are
coming
dangers
to
in
you.
traveling in and out of time as we understand it. But it's not unlike traveling down a river, you see. You travel down the river, round the bend, look back, and you cannot see around the bend, can you? But that does not mean it is not there, does it? But certain clubs would like us to think that a truth, I say truth, uncovered should stay hidden.
I belong to no club, and if you're unwilling to allow any discussion...
No, this isn't a discussion, it's a grilling. There's nothing I can do for you if your mind has been made up. You seem to know the answers to your questions. Why do you ask?
I'm sorry you're unwilling to defend your beliefs in any kind of rational
Oh,
way.
if you already know the answers to your questions, then why ask? Pig fuck! We are not helpless. And we are on a journey that risks the dark. If you don't mind, a good night to you. Ready? Stop.
Coming in at a very close second place is The Hunt by Thomas Vinterberg, and if you haven't already seen his film The Celebration, I'd highly recommend you check it out. Now, I know the Academy Awards decided to call this a 2013 release, but this is a 2012 movie for me. When it comes to film festivals and limited showings, the release date can get pretty debatable, so I'd suggest you not worry about it. When it premiered at the 2012 Cannes Film Festival, Mads Mikkelsen took home the Best Actor award, and I can't really argue with that, because the level of suffering and desperation we see from this character is more than convincing. And if you thought a paralyzed man getting a sex surrogate was a ballsy subject to make a movie on, wait till you get a load of this one. The film follows the main character Lucas, who works at a local kindergarten. A series of unfortunate coincidences leads one of the adults to believe that he sexually abused one of the children. And I don't want to spoil too much, but it eventually leads to mass hysteria within his community. And I gotta say, as a person with a penis, this movie fucking terrifies me. To think that human beings are by nature so fucking crazy that entire lives can be ruined by nothing more than a lie is a harsh reminder of the dangers of group mentality and mass hysteria, and it's all delivered extremely well, even the child performances being nothing short of superb. And it's even crazier to think that shit like this actually fucking happens. Most prominently in the 80s and 90s, where crazy news reports would actually fucking tell people that Satanists had invaded their daycares. And if you really feel like being unsettled today, take a look at this news report that shows exactly how things like this happened. Anyway, like I said, it's a really ballsy subject matter, but regardless, it's a great film, and it's hard to imagine it could have been delivered in a better way.
Hvordan kan du finde på sådan noget? Du må være syg.
Find på hvad fanden er det, jeg har gjort?
Jeg synes, det er helt forkert, at vi står her sådan sammen.
Og nu skal jeg fortælle dig, hvad der er forkert. Du har ringet til Markus' mor. Han skulle have været her i dag, og nu må han ikke, fordi du har ringet til ham. Hvad tror du, han tænker nu?
Jeg tror på børnene, Lukas. Det har jeg altid gjort. De lyver ikke.
Du skal lade Markus være. Forstår du det? Du skal overhovedet ikke blande min familie ind i noget som helst. Er det forstået?
Du skal lade mine børn være. Hører du det? Du må være syg. Clara er en lille uskyldig pige.
Er det klar? Grete, er det klar?
Vi stopper her.
Jeg står lige og snakker med Grete, Johan.
Jeg vil gerne holde med ud
Hvad
herfra.
er det, hun har sagt til dig, der er sket? Hvad?
Jeg vil gerne
Det er min bedste vens datter, det ved du godt, ikke?
Ja, kom så. Går sgu ikke.
Hold nu kæft for helvede, det er klar. Skal vi lige have snøjet med Theo?
Ja, kom så.
Hvad?
Stille og roligt.
Hvad laver du her? Hvorfor sidder Ulla og græder inde på kontoret?
Jeg tror, du skal gå nu, Lukas.
Hvad fanden laver du?
Nu er det nok.
Hvad fanden laver du?
Vi tror ikke mere at tale om nogensinde. Kom så.
And my favorite movie of 2012 is Unpredictable. It's Amor. It's from my favorite director. You should know this. And honestly, it was a really close call between this and The Hunt. And there was a part of me that wanted to give this spot to The Hunt so bad just because I didn't want to seem predictable. But alas, it is difficult for me to lie to myself, and this is genuinely my favorite movie of 2012. Now, if anybody remembers my 2009 list, he made a film called The White Ribbon, and despite that one being completely in German, this one is now in French. It's the familiar flawlessness of Haneke that we're used to, but the story and subject matter he's decided to tackle make the movie feel fresh and new. Now, obviously, I don't want to spoil too much about this movie, but as you can tell by the main cast members, it's a movie that deals with the harsh realities and troubles associated with old age. And from what I can tell, this is a very personal film to him. And I think the fact that he's already 72 years old is of at least some relevance. It's really gonna suck when he dies, but I think that this film is in some way his acknowledgement of death, and that whether we like it or not, our physical bodies aren't designed to last forever. And part of what I love about Haneke so much is that he's brutally honest in every depiction he makes. To sugarcoat the most horrific realities of life would not only be dishonest, but it wouldn't be as emotionally effective. And this is a film that aims to hurt. Putting all of that aside, I'm still monumentally impressed by how well he's able to convey emotion with extremely minimal use of music. And I respect the intelligent consistency whenever he does use music. The few points that we actually do hear a song over top of scenes in the film are points when the song's actually being played in the movie's universe. So it's as if you're watching a scene where a character's dialogue continues to play despite jumping to different points in the film, except instead of dialogue, it's audio from a song being played. And this way he's able to provoke emotion by overlaying songs on top of scenes, but unlike almost every other movie with a soundtrack, the songs don't magically exist outside of the movie's universe. It's as if the tools he's working with to tell his story are all within the story itself. And I gotta say, what's more honest than that? It's as if he feels it's illegitimate to try and provoke emotions from things that aren't actually a part of the story. And although obviously I love films with great soundtracks, I can't help but be impressed by his ability to mostly do without. Visually, he sets up every single shot fucking perfectly. I can't even begin to think of how much communication there was with the extras for this shot, because no matter which person you focus on, there isn't a single person that's doing anything that doesn't look natural. Remember that there's very good reason why this guy's my favorite director, and I'd pretty much consider him to be a genius at what he does. Unfortunately, there's no one short scene that I could use to describe this movie and also not spoil it, so I'm gonna show you a bit from the trailer instead, and I think that it does the movie justice.
Tout à l'heure, quand je suis entrée, je me suis rappelé comment je vous écoutais toujours faire l'amour quand j'étais petite. Ça me donnait le sentiment que vous vous aimiez et qu'on resterait toujours ensemble.
Mais qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
No, it's not okay. Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Tu ne vas quand même pas malmener ton image sur tes vieux jours.
Tu m'en garderais bien. Mais c'est quoi mon image?
Tu es un monstre parfois.
Non mais dis-moi, qu'est-ce qu'il y a? T'es devenu fou?
Assieds-toi.
Non mais je veux pas m'asseoir. Qu'est-ce qui se passe ici?
Well, there you have it, my top 10 of 2012. Now, I know not every film on this list is for everyone, but hopefully I've defended them well enough so that you can at least see that there's some form of talent going into each one of these. And since I started these lists with my 2009 review, I'd like to see if I can get the time to start going back each year in between these yearly reviews. So even though the 2013 list is gonna come out a year from now, you might see 2008 sometime before then. Anyway, if any of these movies seem appealing to you, go bake some fresh tortillas and let me know how it went. Or you can buy them on Blu-ray like me. Literally every single one of them this year you can buy on Region A Blu-ray. We kinda lucked out this time. Still trying to buy Armadillo from 2010, but it's only Region B. Thanks, Region Locking, for helping to deter piracy once again.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. thread that's in my head, it won't spin the other way again. The spool of thread that's in my head, it won't spin the other way again. The spool of thread that's in my head, it won't spin the other way again. The spool of thread that's in my head, it won't spin the other way again. For me, for me, and I want it to change.